Hello, I'm Bridget, and I'm here today with Gregory Maupin. This is him. And it's very early in the morning, and I've dragged him on to talk about Shakespeare and Taylor Swift. And
one of which I know a reasonable amount about professionally, and one of which not.
One thing you need to know about Greg right away. Can I call you Greg on this? I know
Absolutely.
that, like, your stage name is Gregory.
No, the name I would sign on documents and put in field when I'm paying for things is Gregory. And so that became like my Facebook name 20 years ago. And so now I can tell people who know me primarily in person or virtually whether they call me Greg or Gregory, which
so it's
I
not
no
like
longer
equity.
have the association with like mom's angry. You know, that's when you get your full name.
Your mom's never
Gregory.
angry. I've met her. Is she?
I'm her child, so you know that she's eventually been.
Fair.
Anyway, yes, Greg.
So I have brought my friend Greg here, and as you know, I don't host a podcast. I've been on like a bajillion podcasts, and so I was like, "Hey, Greg's gonna be on my podcast," and he's like, "You don't have a podcast." I'm like, that's true. So this is I don't have a podcast because I know that I'm not going to do all the follow through. Like, it's a lot of work, and if somebody out there was like, "Yes, this is good. You two should host one," then please do the admin.
This is a limited series.
A limited series
of one.
For now, it might go on because I feel like you and we just recorded an entire podcast, except we didn't record it like downstairs at the e-table. So I brought him on today because he doesn't know a lot about Taylor Swift. And that's not because of any sort of like disdain. It's because there's just a lot of music in the world, and you do a lot of things, right?
I do. Those are both true. And I should also say that I am a 52-year-old, as I was saying to you earlier. Like, I check all of the oppressor boxes demographically. And so, like, you don't want me to be a Taylor Swift fan because it gets less cool. The minute I'm super into a thing, a person who is reasonably hip should immediately be like, oh, I should start looking for a new thing.
Okay, yeah.
I can't make that my personality because this guy has immediately devalued it with his interest.
We do not want that to happen.
No, I respect Taylor Swift too much to condemn her, if I can quote Gary Oldman in
he's going to quote somebody.
Dracula.
Okay, so why then you may be asking, am I sitting here talking to Greg? I should have done like a bio presentation prepared for you, but you do so many cool things, and I hate the question, hey, tell me about yourself. So I'm going to say some things, and then I'm going to let you just jump off of that because we sort of bounce off each other's brains.
Yes, I'm not interrupting a woman here. That's not what's happening.
Okay, yeah, exactly.
We are both
collaborative overlapping.
Collaborative overlapping.
Cooperative overlapping.
Collaborative in this case. Yes. That seems fair. Yes, we both do that. We have an understanding.
We have. So he has not heard the Fate of Ophelia.
Nope.
And I asked him not to listen to it before this, but I had a question about Iambic pentameter last week, and because I just wanted to make sure that before I said, yes, first line of Ophelia is Iambic pentameter, like, I've taken IB English and have gone to college and studied and worked with Shakespeare productions. We know each other through the local music and theater scene, but primarily most people in Louisville know him through Actors Theater of Louisville and Kentucky Shakespeare, both of which he has been in. You've certainly lost track of.
A bunch. I've tried to count.
Yeah, but you're not just. Can you tell us about what you do with Kentucky Shakespeare, I guess?
Besides acting, which people know what that is, how that works. If you do, please let me know because I am still figured. I am also the dramaturg, which in this case, working with Shakespeare, means that I am either providing the production with useful tidbits about whatever period the production might have set in. Last year, we did Hamlet, set in a very early 60s kind of. The younger generation of play was very in tune with, say, Greenwich Village, that kind of early 60s.
It was delightful.
That was very complete unknown.
I saw half
kind of thing, right? Oh yeah, you were.
I was there the night. It was
the night of the and so I did a lot of research so that people could ask me questions, so that they didn't have to do their own research on the Gaslight.
You're like a Google,
whatever, right?
A walking Google for Shakespeare.
I'm the walking Google. Well, that was like cultural dramaturg, or hey, this might be a useful thing to know about 1920s New Orleans. We're doing the thing, but also about Shakespeare in general, as far as like knowing the words, because I'm also the person who part of that job involves me cutting the play. The producers require that the play be of a certain length, and not all Shakespeare is of a certain length, and
especially Hamlet.
Yeah, it's of an uncertain length.
Yes.
And so they're like, okay, we need people in their cars at such and such a time. What can you? So I try to I have to make choices based on that. And so in doing that, I get to know the plays really well because I've already figured out a lot of things about them. So then when I come in to the rehearsal room, and it's also my job to give people whatever help they feel like they need in like untangling. Abigail, my wife Abigail.
You're married? That's my favorite joke.
We've been married for some time. And my prime Abigail. Creative partner as well, Abigail.
She's the best.
She won't sit through this whole thing, so you may make all right. But Abigail, we're a multi-denominational household. She crochets, and we try to make it work. But I am very impatient to do the knitting. I like knitting. There are some things that surround any kind of needlework that are a pain in the butt to me. Like, for example, untangling the inevitable part of the nature of yarn that it is going to tangle. Knitting is just controlled tangling, really, when you think. So, but I don't want that. And I have very little chill about it when it happens. There's a knot, it's a big one, it's a tangle, I've got one. Whereas Abigail will frequently like drop everything you give me. And not because I'm a child that is going to have a fit, but because it like I don't know that she would admit this, but it scratches some sort of a neurological itch in her to untangle the yarn. She absolutely isn't. Now, with Shakespeare, however, the hand is on the other foot. I am more than happy to untangle the yarn for other people when it comes to being like figuring out the language of something. This is a knot. This is definitely a tangle here. This bit of backwards phrasing is very difficult to make live in a modern speaking brain. So let's figure out how you can figure out which parts of it to latch onto, which parts of it where your crampons need to go to get yourself through that sentence. I've mixed the metaphors readily.
No, so this
but
is
Shakespeare does it too.
You're talking to actors about like, hey, this is actually what you're saying here.
Yes, yes. But some of it is this is actually what you're saying. Step one is this is very inside baseball. Step one is this is actually what you're saying. You know, whatever the people who read No Fear Shakespeare books are like, I will paraphrase it, and so you will have some idea what it is. But with Shakespeare, and I'm sure we'll dig into it more heavily because I know you want to talk about the verse first. The order in which the words appear is a vitally important part of how the character's brain is working. Like if they're speaking in a really tangly way, it's not because Shakespeare writes like Yoda or whatever. It is partially because grammar is different 400 years down the road, but it's also partially because we just did Abigail and I just worked on a cutting of it ourselves.
I'm gonna jump in and just give this a plug. Abigail and Greg have like a series of 2-person shows. They're not all Shakespeare. They do a Christmas Carol. They do so many, and it's like traveling troubadour amazingness, and they do house concert style theater. So
it's so much fun.
I will put a link below because it's like my favorite thing to attend. Okay, so you just did Macbeth for spooky season. How perfect.
Yes, and there's a lot of murder. I don't think I'm spoiling anything for anyone to say that there's like a lot of murder.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of discussion of potential murder, and not a whole lot of use of the word murder. And it's not because Shakespeare dug a swords or whatever at the time, but there it seems, for example, to be an inability to sate. Like they refer to it as a lot of things. This act that they're going to commit, but they very rarely get around to murder. A couple of times they do say murder, but most of the time it's like the business.
Like the mafia.
His taking off. Yeah. And we actually had kind of a mafia angle in the one we were doing. There was a very, noir gangster kind of situation with that particular. But and so it's a question of why are you saying this word? Not because, I just said murder over there, so I want to use a different word, which is good writing. You don't want to say the same word over and over again, but there's also a matter of like, I can't get around to it. So, look, we're at the end of a line of verse, but it's the middle of a sentence. I'm still figuring out this thought that I'm going to say. That means to me that so that's the kind of discussions that I end up. This nonsense that I've already entangled myself in.
That's me.
This sentence that's gone on and on. That's the kind of stuff that I try to help other actors unpack it in our. That's
I have
my job.
so many questions.
What the hell does that mean? And also, how do I say it in a way that lets the audience, who does not have the benefit of footnotes handy or the script in front of them, know what that means upon first hearing?
Right. And I have so many questions, but I'm going to try to stay on track. But I want to talk about this another time, just in general, just because I feel like actors probably, I would come to the play with an expectation as that I should already understand everything, But so this is actually really helpful to not even Shakespearean actors know what everything means in it.
No. I mean, we've all got versions, and another job I have when I'm cutting the script is to put together a bunch of notes, like the kind of thing you'd get in like a standard edition. But rather than worrying whether everyone has
Folgers
the right one and making the actors pay for it, they are provided with a script that is the cutting that we have. That is the cutting. This is the cutting we're doing.
You did.
Right. And also and I've just compiled most of those footnotes. I've compiled. Although some of them I've given for like some of them I make up. Some of them are like, well, that's just what that word means. So I will, these are not for publication.
I love that though. But at this point, have you edited every single Shakespeare play?
No.
Which ones have you not done? It's probably easier to say the ones you haven't done than the ones you have, because I feel like you've been the dramaturg and the editor for Kentucky Shakespeare for so long.
For a while, I haven't done. A sad truth of modern is that everybody is really into the Shakespeare, and there's only, I'm going to say 37, with an asterisk, plays. Huh?
Not getting fresh. I'm getting
closer. Yeah, I see the monitor. There are 37 asterisk Shakespeare plays, but we've scooched it down to we only do half of those at best, and in America probably fewer with any regularity. And some of that is because of how high school curriculum work, and some of that is just popularity is self-perpetuating. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's like, oh, nobody's ever heard of that one. We did Cymbeline last year with Shakespeare, and everyone was like, people who come regularly to see these shows and will quote Shakespeare at you. Is that a play by William Shakespeare? Like, I have never heard of it a single time in my life like that. And it's sad because it's got a lot to offer. And there's only 37 one of them. But there are a lot of Beatle fans out there who have never heard Wait or Silly or whatever.
See, listen,
and
you know
so
everything.
they're gonna, but you know what I mean.
I do know.
There are deep cuts for anyone, but the trouble is to go and listen to a deep cut by a recording artist. It means 5 minutes online,
right.
And to see a production of Cymbeline live as intended is a little more. You have to go and
and
gather a bunch of people together, get a lighting designer, all this.
I find that really interesting too, because I think that it's a similar thing in where I had like this big realization last week that I think that I am a Swiftie, but I thought that I wasn't because I had this sort of gatekeeping mentality that you had to know all the stuff. And maybe that's similar to Shakespeare. Like, can you be a Shakespeare fan if you didn't know that Cymbeline was a play?
Absolutely. Right, obviously.
Of course.
Or like you are always going to run into, I lament and have for many years, the loss of that dude at the record store.
Oh.
Because
John Cusack?
Let me be clear that I mean which dude at the record store.
Yeah, tell me.
Which is that you walk up with something and he goes, oh, you like that? It's like, I don't know how to recommend it. I heard one song, whatever. You might like. Flip,
Yeah.
And like that guy. Now there's also the dude at the record store, and sometimes they're the same dude.
Yeah.
Who was going to do, you said John Cusack,
That's
who's going to do
expecting.
the Jack Black, I just called to say I love you spiel. And that's not the guy I mean.
Yeah.
I do not mean the gatekeeper guy. I mean the guy who has a catalog in his head.
Yes.
Who will then say, oh, that's the thing you're into? And without saying, I too am into that, because he may not be.
Right.
He may be like, I'm not interested in jazz at all, but you've got this Coltrane album. Do you know this earlier Miles Davis album? I'm just aware that is the trajectory that, you might like it. Oh,
right.
I might. He's also there to make
I feel like you're very good at being that person too. I
try to be. I miss mixtapes.
Yes.
Like real money.
I know what you mean.
You can share a playlist. It's not meaningful.
I haven't done it. Yeah. Okay, so I brought you on.
Anyway, sorry.
No. I'm trying to think about part of. I just adore talking to Greg, and he's brilliant, and you guys should all know who he is. And I'll drop all kinds of links. He's a songwriter and plays all kinds of string instruments. And he and Abigail have this amazing duo that's like a vintage duo. They play speakeasies all over town, all over the country, and I feel like they should be on like the cruise, where all the people dress up.
Oh, the Turner Classic Movies cruise.
Yes.
Yeah, we're working on it.
Yes. Okay. So if you're watching, just hire Greg and Abigail for that, because I feel like they should just like do pop. Anyway, you're super interesting and you know a lot of things. And I got into this Shakespeare discussion online, and it was delightful. The comment section was fun. And it was particularly funny because when I first made the video, my video was like 15 minutes, and I edited it down to 3 minutes and kept it focused on music. But in doing that, I just sort of I skirted over something that was not entirely true, and I'm so glad that people called it out. I was trying to explain an iambic pentameter, and I went, to be or not to be, that is the question, because it was the most accessible Shakespeare quote at the moment. Sure. And I sort of just like went real quiet, and then I was like, the part that I cut out was a really long, boring explanation. It was probably inaccurate of feminine endings and the times when Shakespeare maybe didn't keep to iambic pentameter. So I guess that's what I want to talk about, is like, when is it okay to call something iambic pentameter, and when is it something different within Shakespeare?
Well,
and then we'll talk about Taylor Swift.
Right, and I'm going to pretend like Shakespeare wrote consistent iambic pentameter at the beginning, like when you learn verbs in a foreign language class, and then they're like, this is simple, this is how verbs work, and then at least 30% of the time it's irregular, or yes. I before E after C is wrong, or whatever. But it's simpler to start simple. So let's pretend that Shakespeare wrote inconsistent iambic pentameter for a minute. 10 syllables, 5 feet, 1 foot of each syllable. So in poetic, this is I'm going to do the boring terminology parts to get it out of the way. An iamb is a specific kind of foot of poetry that is weak syllable, rest syllable. Right. Pentameter would be 5 penta of those iambs. So 5 or 2, 10 syllables there. Masculine and feminine endings. Also, if you take foreign language class at any time, you're going to deal with that thing. If you're learning a Romance language, or French, where Italian, where there are masculine and feminine nouns, and it is entirely, if not arbitrary, then lost to time why any of those things are seen as masculine or feminine. Like they're bizarre, like parts of clothes. Right. My pencil is a girl. My belt is a boy. Like why? Why is the kitchen? But anyway, yes, all of those. So it's related to that. It has nothing to do with any. I've heard all kinds of people make up all kinds of things about statements about very 20th and 21st century concepts of masculinity and femininity that have nothing to do with it. What it has to do with is how weird French pronunciation is. If you have the example that I remember seeing was small, petit, masculine. If you're going to attach the adjective small to something masculine in French, you would say petit.
No te, right? Just
no te, right? Yeah,
petit
would be pronounced petit, and your emphasis would be on the t, petit.
An iamb.
Yeah, right. Petit. If, however, you were attaching it to something feminine, you would say petite,
right.
And you wouldn't say petite in French, or in hardcore French, or slowly spoken French, or whatever, or old French at the very least. You sort of say petite, like Cole Porter's "C'est magnifique." right? It gets its own note, it gets its own extra phantom vowel at the end. I know they call it sometimes.
Love that you brought up Cole
Is more of my French comes from Cole than anything in French. De trop, right? But
I know I distracted.
Right? Yeah,
but
no. We did
to
it.
be or not to be.
But yeah, so petit,
Gotcha,
right? So that extra little
hanging.
sort of hanging extra, that is a feminine ending. So
And
that's
it comes
the
from
only reason
French.
it's called that. I am not aware whether Shakespeare would have used the term masculine or feminine ending, or it's just a bit of poetic allowance where sometimes the right word, what's Coleridge? I can look that up, but I won't. You can. I think it's there's a famous definition of poetry that is the best words in the best order.
Oh, yeah.
Like
We'll have to go. Someone Google that.
It feels like Coleridge. Could be.
See, we should have done this live.
Coleridge.
I feel like maybe we should do it live anyway.
But because everyone's going to be like, oh, like,
you would
no
be
one
shocked.
cares.
People are going to jump in that comment. We're going to do that as an experiment.
But anyway, so sometimes the word order just sort of demands that the right thing to do it. And also, I'm a believer, along with if you're looking to read up things on using verse in Shakespeare, like out loud, like in a real performance way, the way it is intended to be. There's a guy named Giles Block who wrote a book called Speaking the Speech. He used to be the text guy at the Globe in London.
Oh, no big deal.
Yeah, right. But it's a terrific book. It's very useful. But very much each line is its own thing. The characters have not thought of what they're going to say next. These are not speeches. This is not, in fact, even a book. Like, this is a book, obviously. But these are not novels.
No,
they are
scripts.
blueprints. They're sheet music.
Sheet music.
They're a score.
Right. And that's with any play, right? Like,
yeah. But people look at them often as if they are the single. And they're not the single. You have to go and see the single. You have to go and listen to the single. No one would walk into Willis Music at a mall.
Do you remember that?
This wouldn't be a Louisville conversation unless we mentioned something
that's not
there.
Store
You would never walk into Louisville. You might. But most but a normal person who just wanted to hear a song wouldn't walk into Willis Music at the mall, pick up the sheet music and go like, and then the G, and then they go,
I definitely did that.
the minor falls, the major lift. Right. No, and then the lyrics happen at the same time. What's the bass doing? That's not how that's not how that's not how the intended audience experiences the song.
I like how you were avoiding calling me not normal.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. Absolutely. But also it's true. I walked into Willis Music all the time in search of a song that I had heard on the radio because I didn't have that.
But you heard it on the radio first.
Absolutely.
You didn't go in to be like, oh, I've heard good things about the new Taylor Swift song. I'm going to look at the sheet music instead of listening to it.
Well, that brings me to this. How should we do this?
Not the way to experience Shakespeare, obviously.
Yes,
that's what I'm getting.
So
there was an answer to a question that I should have gotten around to at some point.
No, I don't know that
and
there
it's probably not important. So
drop it in the comments if we didn't answer it.
It'll show up.
So how should we consume the Fate of Ophelia, track 1 off of this new record? Do you want to just hear it the way its intended audience will hear it, or do you want to start with the lyrics and look at them?
The way its intended audience is going to hear it was like at midnight a month ago or something, right? It's like with bated breath. And I can't.
All right.
I don't have that. So yes, let's just hear it. I'm assuming you're going to cut this out. This is not going to make a very interesting reaction video.
You can go ahead and give your reactions. I may cut it out.
The chord.
So I have a lot of questions, and we just listened to the song if I've cut it out, and that was the first time he's ever heard it, so he was taking some notes.
I was taking and admittedly I was, because of the context in which you had me here, I was and I'm always going to do that anyway. I was more intent on like the lyric and going like Shakespeare part.
Right.
So yeah.
But that's exactly why you're here, because a lot of people have noticed, obviously there's Shakespeare references.
It's called the Fate of Ophelia.
Exactly. It's called the Fate of Ophelia. And something that she's known for doing, lots of people do this, and that it's a songwriting technique, is to flip the narrative of something else. And so, there was some talk on day one of how she didn't understand Ophelia. And it's like, no, I think you didn't understand the song. But, maybe quick summary for those who don't know Ophelia. What was her deal?
Ophelia was a rural comedian on the Grand Ole Opry in the early days of it. She used to wear this hat.
That was Minnie Pearl.
Her born name, however, was Ophelia.
No, it wasn't.
Absolutely.
See,
which is why the band song Ophelia was great with like the Alan Toussaint horns.
I love that song.
Right. That's the song's not about Minnie Pearl, but learning that Minnie Pearl's name was Ophelia was kind of what I think the story I heard inspired.
That was a turn I was not
super
expecting.
Catchy song, also with Ophelia in the title that I had not been thinking about until the middle of that. Right. Oh yeah, the horns in that.
Well, besides Minnie Pearl, who is Ophelia? Can you give us like the 2 or 3 sentence? What's Ophelia's deal? Why is she important?
Right. She is.
Why is she relevant?
She is Hamlet's girlfriend in the freezer, in internet comic terms. She, depending on your arguments about the story structure works, but she is the daughter of a nobleman, as someone else has said. She's the daughter of one of the king's advisors. That's the easiest way probably to describe what Bologna is. And she has some sort of a romantic relationship with Hamlet, even before the play began. They exchanged letters and tokens. I feel like I'm being vague here, but I'm being vague intentionally because productions often make different decisions about like, have they done it yet? Do they, does she, lose her virginity to him during the play time, or did it already happen?
And is that what like your job is as dramaturg?
My job as dramaturg is at best to remind people that there is a very interesting book by a woman. I'm going to continue to talk about what actually the Ophelia plotline is.
Good, and we will.
But I want to throw this in there.
Links on the.
There's a scholar named Emma Smith who wrote a book that has Shakespeare in the title, and I can't remember the simple title. Like, this is Shakespeare or what is Shakespeare, or something. And I've lost it entirely to time. But her name is Emma Smith, and I've gleaned the important information. Glean being one of those words that I first heard in Hamlet. That is the word she uses that she created, I guess, for the purpose is gappiness. That a particularly good thing. What's it called? This is Shakespeare.
This is Shakespeare. Computer pocket computer.
Gappiness, which is to say Shakespeare is not necessarily interested in the same details you might want him to be interested in.
Would you say the same of Taylor Swift? Because I feel like, did he have like a parasocial relationship with his fans?
Right? He didn't, because he got famous, but I don't think anyone was that way about him.
They are now.
But they are now. Yes, thanks, Mr. Malone, and your conspiracy theory nonsense. But
okay, sorry, I'm distracted.
No. But I want to be clear that I'm talking about Mr. Malone. I'm talking about a scholar 100 years ago, not Mr. Malone.
I don't know who you're talking about.
The Craig Rice character in the detective novel. Not important.
Greg knows so many things that sometimes I'm just
dumb.
like,
Yeah, no one's gonna unpack that sentence except for like, again, potentially Abigail. Nobody cares.
Yeah, no.
And by not gonna unpack, I mean not gonna bother themselves.
Right.
But
Ophelia,
gappiness, Emma Smith. The idea being that there are details that we live in a time where narratives, I use that word pointedly, knowing things about a little bit about Taylor Swift, but where storytelling seems to require of us, thanks to a few YA writers and their popularity and a few comic book movie fans and the internet, an aggressive amount of detail about everything. Canon. The concept of canon. There's been a lot of talk in the last couple of days about them, I guess, rebooting the James Bond franchise. And like, well, I don't know how to do it. I mean, he died in the last one. It's like, nobody cares. Yeah. It's James Bond. Make the car have tacks come out the back of it and go pew pew, and you're fine. No one put him in a tuxedo once and he'll have a martini. Anything else, just do whatever you want. It's James Bond. No one cares about continuity. It's not how that works. And Shakespeare aggressively did not care about continuity. He cared about making a show. He cared about, does it play? Very obviously. Like, does this work on stage? Some parts of it, because a lot of it, it's funny, I hear people wring their hands about certain of Shakespeare's plays. They're like, well, it doesn't work for an audience. And I will, like, well, I've been there. There's a famous old joke that is asking a Southerner whether they believed in infant baptism, to which he responded, hell, I've seen it done. And like, I've been in these plays, and we've done very little to them, and the audience is like right there with us. So the scholars are frequently reading the blueprint as if it is a house, or frequently reading the score as if it is a scene.
Right.
No, very often they do work. Do we want some of them to work? Like, I don't know. I got a lot of questions about what's been done with the Merchant of Venice in many cases over the years, and whether or there are many people who are like, should you even do that anymore? Othello. There are lots of them that like, should it play the way it does? Like, I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. But I will tell you that if you say those words in that order in front of people, like, they're gonna take that ride with you. But, whether you condone aspects of it or not is not the question. Regardless, gappiness. Shakespeare will very often leave big holes in pieces of information that you might want, because that's how it would have been in whatever fantasy series, like, oh, well, but there's a prequel that tells you, volume 0 over here has got all the details about the side west. The thing went on. Like, that's wonderful and enjoy, but that's not what you're going to get over here. You're not going to get, no one, despite, if I can use wicked as a verb, plenty of people have wicketed Shakespeare over the years. Like, oh, well, let's write Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead, whatever. Right. People have filled in the blanks. That there's a cottage industry of people who just, like, much in the same way that after those two terrific Madeline Miller books, Circe and Song of Achilles, there became suddenly, like, a lot of books all of a sudden about a woman in Greek mythology or world mythology, and what her real story was.
Fan fiction.
Essentially fanfic, but from public domain sources. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm led to believe that Jane Eyre was a piece of, in certain ways of looking at it, a piece of Pride and Prejudice, or Jane Austen fanfic, in that she was like, what's the hell doing all this time? Right. You mentioned a governess. What's her deal?
That's funny. I just
Does she
read
have
Jane
an actual
Eyre.
story?
Yeah, I just read it for the first time in January. I
just reread it about a year ago.
I hadn't read it at all. Time. I just remember texting my friend who teaches AP English, like, halfway through, going like, there's a wife locked in the attic?
Right?
What the hell?
Abigail and I have a running gag that we very much have a Jane Eyre marriage. But
Sorry, what?
to be clear, I am the Jane. I am the small, obscure little bird. And Abigail is both Rochester, crotchety, losing her eyesight, and Bertha. Very much. She self-describes as your crazy wife in the attic.
Oh, sweet.
But so she's very much, and I also, in fairness, have a decent amount of Pilot in me too, which is her problem. Hey, hi.
I'm really puppy dog.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, Pilot has always struck me as one of those oversized dogs
fair.
who never accepted that he grew out a lap dog.
Fair.
Mercifully, neither of us is an Adele, because I don't think we live with that. Thank you. But anyway, Ophelia. Sorry.
No, I love it. This is
did.
podcast, right? It happens.
Ophelia's story, gappiness, lack of detail that you might want, but that also allows a lot of leeway for. There's two ways to argue this. It allows a lot of leeway for people to write things like Rosencrantz and her Dead, or there was a movie that I think called Ophelia a couple years ago that was like the Ophelia angle of the story that changed a lot of detail, but was more interested in her story as a character tangential to the main thrust of things, which is Hamlet's journey. That's how Hamlet works. But it's also a trick where when you're acting or mounting a production, how many of those details do you want to insist on because they're not there? They're not there. And I say that it's like 10 minutes of me talking just now has been me explaining why I'm being cagey about the details of Ophelia's storyline, because I want to say what they actually are and not what people might bring to it themselves.
What they filled in. And it's interesting because I feel like that's any character, like actors make choices and they decide, they didn't have enough breakfast today.
Yeah.
But like,
and sometimes the audience will be aided by those choices you've made. And sometimes they're for you. Yes. Sometimes they're for you to feel those specifics that you give. But like they're not in the story. So you you can't say, well, unless you're staging it, unless you're making a scene where it happens, we don't know about the sexual history of Ophelia and Hamlet. We can make assumptions, but they are assumptions.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter.
For example,
right?
If it was that important to Shakespeare, it would be in the play.
Right. But and also just taking this, like it is not new to write about a Shakespeare minor character. And also would you call Ophelia a minor character?
No, but it's hard to say because it's also Hamlet. Talking about like a character the same size as Ophelia who was also in Cymbeline would get called a minor character.
Right.
But Hamlet is Hamlet. And everyone, the one.
Yeah. But like, do you know off the top of your head how many scenes she's actually in?
No, but I do know that she dies reasonably early and would probably die earlier if she didn't. There's this thing that is traditionally called Burbage break.
Yeah. Explain.
So
she dies in Act 4, Scene 7.
Right, which is fairly long in most plays, but Act 5 is actually, sometimes in Shakespeare, Act 5 is like a scene that's everyone gathering together, and it's sometimes there's a whole other thing that starts happening in Act 5 because Hamlet's a long ass play.
So she dies fairly early for Shakespeare.
Well, she also, it's less true to say that she dies fairly early, I should say, than that she goes out of the action for large portions of time and then come back.
Yeah. She's not on stage a lot.
She's right. She doesn't have a wild amount of lines compared to everyone else in it. The men around her, I would say, there's only two actual,
which is also
written female,
pointed.
Ophelia, and that's the laws of being on stage at the time.
Sure.
Harriet Walter has lovely things to say about that in her open letter to William Shakespeare. You can find that.
Amazing.
It's great. It's just 4 pages long. The newspaper article that you put at the back of her book, Brutus and Other Heroines. If you're into reading an actress write about her career in Shakespeare.
I'm interested in things you think are interesting.
But she's a dame. I mean, come on. She knows what she's doing.
I keep distracting
Ophelia.
him.
I am going to just tell. So the Ophelia storyline, as I am fully off the cuff, like drunk historying this, is she is. We first see her have a conversation with her brother who is leaving town, who says, "Hey, I know that you think Hamlet is into you, but his life is not. No, not even that.
Not even that.
His life is not his own. Hamlet is a prince out of thy star. That's actually her father's line. But Hamlet is a public figure. Hamlet is not just a member of the royal family, but an incredibly public forward, popular member of the royal family. And no matter whether he likes you or not, his will is not his own. He is. That doesn't mean those glorious Cinderella stories are stories. It does not mean that the glorious prince is going to pick this non-royal family type girl out of obscurity and make her queen. That is not. Maybe don't get too attached to this relationship. Whatever. He's not. He doesn't really slam Hamlet so much. A little, but he does a sort of like, hey, you can't trust boys. I know I'm a boy.
Good advice.
But also like he would be marrying way down socially in a
don't
time
get your
when
hopes
that
up.
makes a difference. So look out.
Yeah.
And then the father comes and also saying farewell to Laertes, and Laertes, asshole, leaves saying, and remember what I said to you about Hamlet, and then scrams. And Dad is like, so what did he say to you about Hamlet? Just I've been meaning to talk to you about it myself. What's between you two? He's given me many tokens, essentially. They've written letters. There are letters. There are emails. And he said, and he's a little harder on her, but he says the same thing and also says, call it off. No more. Let me not see you, in company anymore. And she says, fine, Daddy. Essentially, I'm definitely interpreting when I say that. She could be like, she wishes, I don't know. It depends. You're the actor. That's not somebody. Nobody's casting you. Maybe a audio.
Yeah.
But regardless, that happened. And then they use her as a pawn to figure out. They're like, Hamlet's acting crazy. What's going on with him? They being his father, who murders Uncle Euler, and sorry.
Yeah, Scar.
Strike that. Reverse
instead
it.
of Simba.
Yes, his uncle Scar and Zazu meet to be like, I've got an idea. This is how we tell why he's acting this way. Let's send Ophelia to him. Let's use my daughter as bait to see, because I think the reason that he's acting crazy is that I told her to call it off. And actually, in the uncut version, which is rarely done, in the scene where I left out a little bit, where Ophelia comes running in to Polonius and says, crazy shit just happened. Hamlet just came into my room, half, with disheveled clothing, did this weird series of gestures at me.
That
where
is weird.
Right, and took my arm really hard and weird, and then backed out of the room.
Red flag.
Right. Very, but also like very weird, like not actually abusive,
right.
but just bizarre.
Yeah.
And her father is surprisingly apologetic about like, oh, this is on. I told you to ignore him. Maybe he really wasn't, and this is sent him over the deep end. I am sorry. He's got a lovely line again that often gets cut because people trim this stuff down, and
did you cut it?
Left it in. No, we actively left it in this year because it's funny. I'm sorry that with better heed and judgment I had not quoted him. I feared he did a trifle and meant directly, but beshrew my jealousy. By heaven, it is as proper to our age to cast beyond ourselves and our opinions as it is common for the younger sort to lack discretion, which I like a lot. It's a moment of self-reflection. People see Polonius as a fool very often, as a gibbering old man.
Yep.
And he has a moment of like, old man, we think we know everything, and you don't know anything, but we're both in the wrong,
right?
Potentially, generationally. Anyway, so he takes that information, however, straight to his boss and says, hey, because currying favor, I suspect, but we could be trying to do the right thing. I don't know. And so they're like, let's just offer Ophelia out to him and have her have a conversation with him, and we will eavesdrop on that conversation. So Scar and Zazu eavesdrop on that conversation. She comes out. She's been given a little prayer book. He says to be or not to be, to himself, not to her, and then notice that she's there and says, remember me in your prayers, nymph. And she has a weird and stilted conversation with him because she is aware that they are being eavesdropped on, and he is not. And at some point, he gets very angry at her because of this weird stilted conversation they're having, which doesn't jive right with him. He yells a lot of things at her, where some of which are not clearly meaningful, and some of which are very pointed. Whether you believe he figures out that someone's eavesdropping on the conversation, again, mad abduction. Whether or not you think when he shouts "get thee to a nunnery," or would that be a breeder of sinners, is him making a legitimate point at her, or whether he's using some sort of obscure Elizabethan slang for house prostitution.
That's what I always heard.
That's because people say that sort of thing.
Yeah, it was in like an AP English course.
But because they know that keep it interesting for kids.
That's
fair.
But
it's also way more. It's a pretty obscure thing to say because it doesn't really line up with what he's actually saying to her. It's in
not even
prose. Most of this we didn't talk about prose because oversimplifying earlier, we're like Shakespeare, right? 10-syllable lines, sometimes 11.
Like 70% of the time. Is that a good guess? 60,
it depends on the play. It really depends on the play. But there's also a lot of chunks of prose, and prose has a lot of different. Prose being not meter, prose being not having that sort of dictated rhythm.
Yep. So, and just to clarify to people who've never seen a Shakespearean production, the actors don't stand up there and go da da da.
Prose not right. No.
Even when it is,
you feel it. It's a thing that you feel.
Yeah, and that in the same way that music makes you feel things, like it either makes you feel unsettled, and because our brains are incredible at pattern recognition.
Yeah, absolutely. And even when it's your subconscious brain. Like most people do not sit back and go, oh, they're in prose now.
No.
But they hear a difference in what's going on. But usually they're engaged in the events that are going on too much to go like, why are they coming in and out of prose and verse? Why is that character speaking in a rigid verse and that character is not?
So what was going on there? Why?
There are different reasons. Sometimes it's for crowd work, pure and simple. Sometimes it's like, you could argue that, say, Benedict in Much Ado About Nothing and Hamlet both do soliloquies. But Hamlet is doing a soliloquy. Hamlet is trying to work through a thought problem and is using his aloneness with the audience as a method of figuring that out. Benedict is doing crowd work. Right. Benedict is sort of doing, or Lance with his dog in Two Gentlemen of Verona, or many Falstaff sometimes. They are doing crowd work. So that's one place for prose, because you can't meter comedy.
So what do you mean by crowd work?
I mean in the stand-up comedian sense of like, hey, where are you from? I mean that.
Because these words that are written down in books that we study in school were actually scripts for actors.
They were scripts for actors, yes, and they learned a lot of them by ear as well, because these were, whether or not there was any real concern about getting these were usually prevented from being published.
Right. You don't want to share the scripts.
Because
that's how theater works.
Right. That's how someone else would come and actively like write down stuff you were saying and steal your script and do that. So you don't want it. So anyway, prose can be the loosey-goosiness of comedy sometimes. I mean, comedy in the modern sense of like getting laugh in the audience is often not just like there's a structural way of defining tragedy comedy, and that's another. Comedy, like getting laughs from the audience, is easier to do out of verse. So that's one thing.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Two, going back to Giles Locke on this one, although I'm sure we got it from somewhere. There's a sense of separation. You were doing the thing earlier that is a very common way where people learn iambic pentameter by thinking of it as a heartbeat. And there is a sense that there's a sense of sounding like, being or sounding like you are metaphorically in line with your heart. Speaking the truth, speaking something that sounds like the truth, you know, you're being in line with your own emotional or intellectual goings on, whereas prose is out of that. Right. Prose is not that. So prose whatever not that could mean. Does it mean you're lying? Does it mean there's something that you're not accepting, that you're does it mean something that you don't want someone else to figure out? Whatever, you are out of rhythm.
Yes, out of thing.
The rhythm is out. And sometimes that doesn't mean it's something drastic. That also could just mean that it is for comic purposes, right, you know. Or and there are entire plays that are written in prose, and that's not to say
Shakespeare plays?
Yeah.
I did not know this.
Almost no verse in them at all. That are like Merry Wives is primarily, Twelfth Night is both. It goes back and forth pretty rapidly between each one, and it's great. But so it has a lot of different purposes. But one important one is also states of mental illness.
So what's Ophelia's arc in terms of her mental
when
versus how
like
her
the
lines
famous Ophelia scene that we're getting up to, which is after Hamlet wigs out on her and flees, she has a very pointed soliloquy as the eavesdroppers are coming down the stairs, but Hamlet's off stage. She has an "oh, what a noble mind is here o'erthrown" thing, where she realizes that Hamlet and fully believes that Hamlet is off. Oh, what a noble mind is here o'erthrown.
That sounds like pentameter.
It absolutely is. Okay. It is after a scene that comes in and out because of Hamlet. Hang on, you can cut this while I flip the pages.
Maybe. Oh, what a noble.
She comes in and out of she doesn't say enough, but she goes into prose with him. Good beauty, my lord, have better commerce with honesty. Yeah. But that scene. So we want to talk about that scene. So he says to be or not to be. He says, remember me in your prayer. How does your honor for this many a day? Pretty much, he says, well, cool. We can talk about you and thee, thou too, in a different way, but we won't.
Okay. Yeah.
But,
this is a whole.
It's kind of like, I humbly thank you. Well, is like, oh, maybe it's not a weird thing to say to someone who recently become your ex, but it's clearly not
a little more formal.
Hey, honey, how you doing? It's good. My lord, I have remembrances of yours that I have longed to redeliver. Longed is. I pray you now receive them. No, not I. My honored lord, you know right well you did, and with them words of so sweet repose. She's in verse. She is having a verse scene with him.
So what does that mean?
Well, it could mean several things. It could mean she is speaking the truth, which in fact she is. These are obvious truths. You gave me these.
Right. Fact.
It is a lot more measured, you know.
Oh yeah. Like I'm going to say this thing that I've thought out.
It's a little like verse is anything but stiff and can be anything but. Yeah, it's kind of the opposite in a lot of ways. Like verse tends to flow in freestyle hip hop terms. Verse flows. It is not people giving speeches. Yeah.
Right.
To go into another curriculum play, Julius Caesar, which everyone has to deal with at some point. Brutus steps up in front of the crowd and delivers this speech in prose that is totally thought out and not emotional.
Okay.
It is a speech that he gives to the people, and everyone's like, all right, and that's good, and it's prose.
It's not true to the heart.
No, and or it's not about the heart in any way. It is very much a factual statement of things that happen and how you should respond to that. And the people all go, all right, good, great, thanks, Brutus. I guess you should have killed that guy. He talks him down. It works.
Yeah.
And then Mark Antony famously gets up there with his friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears, shut them up, and then does his whole speech. And speech, because of the connotations of it now, is the worst thing you could call that. It is not like it is cagily done, but he does not orate in some like debate club way. He comes out and flows emotionally, and that is what wins the crowd over. It is not the like, well, I wrote this all out, 10 syllables per line, and did it. It's like, no, he comes up there in a fit of anguish over the death of his friend, which is both true and politically expedient. So whether he is very in tune with his emotions or a more effective liar than most, either could be true. That's up for the director and Mark Antony to figure out. But the verseness of it is not a sign that it is rigid. It is quite the opposite. Now, that doesn't mean that prose is always rigid and thought out either. You know, the rules are not hard and fast. They are definitely vibe-based.
They're vibe-based. Well, that brings me back to...
Because I could contradict everything I've just said with a different example somewhere else.
So yeah, that's an interesting thought too, because something I've noticed is, people are always asking, do you think Taylor Swift did this intentionally? In the very much the same way that people ask that of Shakespeare.
Yeah.
Still today. Did he do
did
that
everything
intentionally?
intentionally.
Of course he did.
He had a chance to write this down first. He did it all intentionally. He could have, if it bugged him, he could have gone, that part doesn't work.
Yeah.
And God knows he'd have ample opportunity in the longest play.
Sure. So do you think that in the Julius Caesar example, like the one being an iambic pentameter and one being in prose, like, you think was that intentional?
Obviously.
Of course it was, right?
Clearly. Yeah, right.
I didn't want to say it seems very intentional to me because I'm not the Shakespeare expert here.
But musically speaking, you do a long, weird legato. I'm thinking of more like a recit in an opera, where it's like, no, I'm saying lots of things, and it doesn't really ever land upon a melody, and then the harpsichord goes, blang. And then you sing a song. You should probably know that since he's left, I am screwing another man, and it's not my husband, and I'm probably going to die of tuberculosis about it. Blung. But I've suddenly had a thought, and that thought will resolve itself. And then she will sing an aria, and it has specific parts. You know what I mean?
I love that.
And that feels like there's a prose-verse relationship. There's a literal prose-verse relationship there with most librettos. But there's also that sense of like, you could... weirdly, Nymph and Thy Orisons, Like a Prayer comes into my brain because it was on the radio the other day. And the beat doesn't drop for a while. Like there's no set tempo.
Do you remember that video?
I remember the video. I was at the right age to remember the video. It was very.
I didn't even understand what was going on, but I was like,
understood what was going on. And you did. I'm not particularly into Madonna, but like I'm gonna watch.
That was an epic Gen X moment.
Yeah, that was. And it was also on like the crosses.
Yeah, it seemed crazy. The blood tears.
Right. Anyway, right. But it does, and then that's just the first example because there's all kinds of songs where like we float for a while, and then the beat drops.
Yes.
And it's simply it's that.
Yeah.
Brutus comes out and does a thing that seems, even though it's precise, it seems kind of formless and not like punching you in the heart. And then Mark Antony punches you in the heart. It's your heartbeat.
Right.
I don't think it's much about the character. I don't think. The character. Yeah, sure, the actor, whatever. But you, the audience, are the one who needs to be affected by the beat. That's true of things,
of anything,
right?
Yeah.
Because you're playing it for somebody. So ditto with all of this. It feels like, again, it is vibe-based. It feels to me, I'm sure there were some rules that he had written down, but all I've heard of all these nonsense things. Well, the highborn characters speak in verse, and the lower folk speak in prose. Like, well, that would be very convenient if it were true at all for the length of even one play, but it ain't.
That is so interesting. I feel like anybody who's taken an English class learned all kinds of rules like this.
Yeah, but you learn all kinds of,
And that's just a problem.
Abraham Lincoln invented the question mark. Whatever. Rules that are like, no, none of what.
So if you were studying Shakespeare, it would be more play-by-play based, or just, I mean, I guess as far as looking for rules of things that Shakespeare did.
Shakespeare existed long before internal combustion or the need for a bouncy sort of tie wood, metal, I go back at.
Right.
So to say rubber hits the road would be meaningless. But in my experience, having done a lot of Shakespeare plays, the rubber hitting the road is far more interesting. Like, does it work? Then do that. That feels like what happens in a lot of Shakespeare, because a lot of it, again, it is contradictory. If I try to set out rules of how the prose or how the verse works, like here, it seems like this is what wants to happen. Elsewhere, there will be a remix of the Fate of Ophelia at some point.
Oh, there is
already. Great.
Yeah, it's awesome.
And Taylor Swift will be involved with one of them, or her producer.
Yeah, I think she put it out herself a couple days ago.
And also, inevitably, I will see some damn reel of someone who just changed it entirely.
Yeah.
With
like
some
Shakespeare.
weird little phrase. Right. Yeah, I mean, except he's in the public domain.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. You got to share your royalties.
Shakespeare still has royalties. But
I know we completely derailed. I played that song for you like half an hour ago.
You did. It's true. Yeah. What time even is it?
I don't. Okay. It is 10:50. All right. So we've only been talking about
Yeah. You can cut all this.
But I find it interesting too. Like thinking about yourself as thinking about you. I hate when people mess up myself and yourself. Thinking about you, but if you were thinking about yourself as not just an enjoyer of Shakespeare, but as a writer yourself, I think that's when we get more understanding and forgiving about these so-called rules, and also the just delight of when you catch a pattern that you don't ever expect anyone else to catch.
Yeah.
Or and the satisfaction of creating your own puzzles that you want to solve. Because and as your songwriting or your playwriting evolves throughout your own life, how those rules then change and shift, and what you realize you had been doing that either you want to change or you want to adopt as your thing that you do.
Yeah, and then when you adopt that, how you know how to change that in the middle of a project. Go like, by the way,
exactly. So can we talk quickly?
David Lynch making the straight story. Yeah.
Yeah. I want to talk quickly about in Hamlet.
Yeah, we still haven't gone through Ophelia's personal plot.
We don't have to go. We don't have to do it all.
It's Googleable, honestly.
It's Googleable, but it's more interesting having like a legit dramaturg do this because I feel like I got most of my understanding from high school English teachers and not from people actually doing Shakespeare and living paper. And you have edited, and I also want to do a quick plug for something that you haven't even done. This man has edited just about every Shakespeare play and has like short or, a 60-minute version or a 90-minute version like available. And he won't like put a website up and get, sell them to people. But
it would at this point take me less time to drive it to you than to put a website up.
But if you're like a teacher out there looking for a good edited version of a Shakespeare play, like message me and I'll ask Greg, or I'll put him if he'll let me, because I have room on my website to drop his versions of things. But they're wonderful, and they get hundreds of thousands of people every summer see your cuts.
Let's say tens out.
Okay, but close to tens and tens and a lot of people, and several thousand each night will come and see a show that you did, and then tell their friends, and more people come back the next night. Like, they're good shows, and they're really well thought out and edited. So that's a side plug. But so in talking to you, it's a lot more interesting because you're both an actor, a writer, an artist, and an expert in the editing and dramaturg and stuff. He's also way too humble, so this is why I'm saying this, and he's not.
That's more. I'm just putting the word expert in quotes, as it should always be said about anything.
Oh, that's fair. That's fair. But you're much more of an expert than I think most people talking on the
internet.
I
know what I don't know. Yeah.
That's brilliant.
I guess.
But can we talk somewhat quickly about Ophelia's her verse versus prose?
Her verse versus prose. Well, here. So she kind of follows his lead once he goes into prose in the big scene, in the big gets you to a nunnery accusation scene, even though she's sort of like, what are you even accusing me of exactly? She barely gets a word in. It's really difficult to say whether she's speaking in prose while he's going on about the nunneries, because she's got lines like heavenly powers restore him. Like, she doesn't get 10 syllables in very often until he leaves, and we get, oh, what a noble mind is your o'erthrown, which is very specific. Oh, woe is me to have seen what I have seen, what I see. She also says at the beginning, and I've always thought this is interesting, their perfume lost. She says, of the crap you gave me, of your letters, and I have remembrances of yours that I have longed to re-deliver, right? The letters and tokens.
Does she really say of the crap you give me, or did you just?
I just said.
Okay, I really was hoping that was like the origin of that word.
Right. She says that these things that you gave me, you gave me these things, and with these things you gave me words of so sweet breath composed as made these things more rich. Their perfume lost. Take these again, because the words you wrote me love notes. The love notes are now meaningless, obviously, and therefore I should give you back the things that you attached love to. And why? Because to the noble mind, rich gifts wax poor when givers prove unkind.
That's good advice.
Right, that's fair. So she says, to the noble mind, which is to say her own, rich gifts wax poor when givers prove unkind. She's the person in this situation, so the noble mind is hers. Right. We should know, right? Is that fair to say? I think it is. The famous line when he says to a nunnery, go, and runs off. Clearly, the best way to play mental illness on stage is to go, is also good. It's an old Python cat. She says, oh, what a noble mind is here o'erthrown. It seems clear that she is talking, oh, what a noble mind is here o'erthrown.
Yeah,
she goes back into a tight verse about Hamlet, and she means Hamlet has obviously lived his way. The courtiers, soldiers, scholars, eye, tongue, sword, the glass of passion and the mold of form. I love all the observed of all observers. That's the famous one that pulls out of it. His mind has his o'erthrown. But also a couple of pages ago, hers was the noble mind. So whether she knows it or not, this is what you call dramatic irony when somebody says something that they don't understand the significance of, but you, the audience, do. Oh, what a noble mind is here o'erthrown. It's like, yeah, the beginnings of your noble mind being o'erthrown are in this moment as well. I've seen her played where she comes out already like this sort of broken bird in the first scene we see her in, and I think that does her a disservice because there's no journey. No like if she's somebody who's right on the edge of cracking, and then we crack her, it's like, well, I knew that was going to happen. I mean, I know everything can happen. It's 400-year-old play, but it's like that. There's not a journey to see.
Right.
It also makes Hamlet either more cruel or significantly less cruel because, like, well, I mean, she was some sister.
Yeah.
Or you knew something was going to happen to this kid. Why would you do that? Right.
Right.
And instead, you give her an autonomous kind of journey about the situations around her. If you make what's gone on push her over the edge, and I feel like people sometimes overplay that, but that is an editorial comment, not something that's in Shakespeare. But anyway, she has this speech, and then the next thing that happens, as far as she's concerned, the players show up. Hamlet has this whole thing where he's going to mess with his uncle and so all that she gets, then he totally, we don't know if they have seen each other in between that last scene, and we have no report. But he comes in and starts making utterly filthy genitalia jokes publicly at and with her when he's like, hey, his mom is like, hey, Hamlet, you want to sit over here? She's like, no, I'm going to sit over with the hot girl here. And she's like, oh, yeah. And he proceeds to do some weird country matters stuff. And she's like, but I feel like that little verbal verbal assault is off put by the fact that he can't seem to remember when it was his father died. Like, the whole conversation is too weird for her to take it personally, perhaps. Maybe I'm editing.
No, that's fair.
After he makes the dirty jokes publicly at her, he then also is like, look how happy my mother is, and my father's, dead these 2 hours. It's like, it's been 4 months. What are you talking about?
Right.
And it's clear that I guess she's maybe cutting in some slack for his weird verbal assault, because he also, the last time she spoke of him in our presence, was to say,
right. And we must remember
but he's also a public figure,
and
she is part of the court.
Exactly.
And like everything.
And a woman.
And a woman. And this is all being done in public. We are in a public viewing of a play. So it's
be cool. Be cool.
Yes. Like, so she's going.
Be cool. That's an iamb. Be cool.
Yes,
be cool. Be cool. Be cool. Be cool.
Don't
That's
say
what
it
I
too
would
many
have
times it turns into Leonard Bernstein. So then things happen, and Hamlet inadvertently murders her father. So
right. Oh, because he's hiding behind the curtain. Is
right.
That the thing?
And then we do not see her during any of this. He's hiding behind. Right. He gets stabbed inadvertently. Hamlet's like, oh God. Well, here we go. They ship Hamlet out of the country. Right. With plans to have him killed while he's out of the country.
I have questions that are going to derail us. I'm going to make a note.
So we don't see her during any of this. And I mentioned the Burbage break earlier. This also structurally has the convenience. My personal belief is it happened when after Richard III, who never gets a damn break, it's just on the whole time.
Oh wow! Have
and
you played
I have
Richard?
to assume no. I'm not clear that it's appropriate for an actor anymore to play it who doesn't have their own physical issues that are in some way in tandem at least with Richard's side. But no, I never did.
Okay. Did you play Hamlet?
No. Nobody ever lets me play those. I don't get to play Hamlet.
Because you're too good. He's like one of the. It's like when you can do everything, they put you in the ensemble because
we have our own scars of past stories of those.
Don't be insulted if you get the ensemble role. It's because like the lead people
be angry but not insulted.
Yeah, the lead people maybe couldn't also dance.
Right.
Anyway,
like, honestly,
who were you in Hamlet this past summer?
This past summer I was the player king, but I've also played Polonius and I was also the gravedigger.
I remember that.
Yeah, my fancy role. The way you work in a repertory summer is you got your fancy role, you get your large, medium, small in a sense.
Yes.
And this was sort of my small to medium, I guess. Okay. Was because Player King was fun. Got to write a Pete Seeger song for it. Made out
yes,
of a sonnet.
you did. And play the banjo.
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, the 4-string. I just want to be clear that I played more of a.
He played a banjo. He will every time you say something cool about himself, he will.
I don't want anybody thinking I can,
Steve
frail
Cooley
properly, right?
So,
you're right. I can't Steve Cooley the banjo, but I own one.
Same.
I'm a banjo owner.
Well, there's one right there. I bet you could play it. So okay, we're doing Ophelia's journey.
Ophelia's journey. Yes, we haven't seen her, and I was coming back to the Burbage break. Richard III, long ass play, no break for Richard, hardly any at all. And I have a personal feeling that his lead actor was a guy named Burbage. Said, "Don't you ever do that to me again? Don't you ever do that to me
My agent will be calling.
Right? Don't make me walk with like a fake hump.
Yeah.
And then also
memorize 5,000.
Not memorize 5,000 lines, but not even have a chance to go out and get a drink.
Yeah. I gotta pee.
Right? I gotta pee. Don't do that.
Yeah, that's rough.
So usually around Act 4,
Macbeth
disappears for a while this long ass conversation between Malcolm and Macduff happens.
Right.
And Lennox does this, and the witches do a thing. And there's several scenes where the person who has had a whole lot of lines goes away.
So this guy Burbage, you said, I feel like I should.
Richard Burbage. Yeah.
Richard Burbage had an agent.
Shakespeare's main.
Yeah. His agent had a call with Shakespeare, and that is why later. I'm just going to say that later.
Yeah.
Can we write that as a thesis? Right. Can someone out there do the research?
It's been done. This is not. There are no original ideas about Shakespeare.
Okay.
No. But someone has said it. Even if I think I had a do you think? It's like statistically, someone said it, even if it's in a footnote of something.
Right.
But although I try to avoid what they said about him in the 1800s, because the Victorians went a long way to ruining him for everybody. But
okay, back to Ophelia.
Back to Ophelia. So
the fate of Ophelia.
So part of the fate of Ophelia is still the Burbage break in, right? Hamlet's been called out of town, and Burbage has been called off to pee and have a look at his lines.
Yeah, right.
Try to remember how the big sword fight's going to go, right? And so girlfriend in the icebox here has to, because she also unfortunately has a large structural weight to fueling more revenge between Hamlet and Ares. The reason for their big fight at the end is spurred on by her and the murder of Polonius. Couldn't do it better. Because we thought Polonius was a cool audience, clearly on Ophelia's side, as little as. So once Hamlet disappears, has been shipped off to England with his frenemies Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, Amsterdam we go, and then in we're still talking. In 4-5, out he goes, or usually 4-5, it depends. There's 2 different Hamlets. I should be all very clear, but we won't talk about
I feel like most people.
The reason I have 3 books is because we've got a folio, we got a quarto. It's a whole.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's
they're very and they're different in lots of.
You can do a guest
ways.
Blog on my site.
No, you can look all this up. There's people can say it in less interesting but less space of time.
I feel like you're really missing the mark though, and you should have your entire Shakespeare podcast, because it's true, it's Googleable. You can find all the stuff, but it's still hard to understand.
It's hard to understand when I say it because I can't finish a sentence. That's not because of you. Yeah, that's
no,
not
it is.
us.
It's both of us having ADHD.
I have.
I'm diagnosing you.
Deeply going to parenthetical parentheticals. It's funny. One of the things I will try to describe to other actors is like, well, that's a parenthetical. That's a side thought in the middle of his thought. He interrupts his own thought to then go back to this other thought, whether Shakespeare had ADHD or just knew how to report it. Well, I don't know. He accomplished
I feel like every great artist had ADHD.
Yeah, but he also got a lot done.
Yeah, but that's because he wasn't living in like a state with phones and distractions. Right. He could just hyper focus.
And he was, part of an ensemble.
Yeah, he had a deadline. Somebody gave him a deadline.
Yeah. But there's a lot of self-interrupted thought, and you have to find like which part's the interruption.
Right.
Because if you go back to, I love some good like Folio punctuation.
Yeah.
Where it is a lot less like grammatical, drunk and white punctuation. It is very much vibe punctuation. It is very much.
And the Folios being closest to the original.
It feels like a comma has been put in places so that the actor is like, poke that, will you? Not because it needs to have a comma.
Right. Who do you think's the most ADHD Shakespeare character? And is that the most ADHD question that could be asked in the middle?
In the middle of this other thing?
Yeah.
It's funny. I'm in the middle of Macbeth. And I don't know if he's the most, or not in the middle. We just did it a week ago.
Yeah.
I don't know that he's by no means the most ADHD character, but I do think there is the most famous ADHD moment in Shakespeare is probably him getting through if it were done when 'tis done, then for well it were done. He's considering the concept of consequence. Like, if I could murder without consequences of bad consequences, just get the good parts, and this would all be fine. But everybody likes him, and they're gonna be awful when he dies, and that's no good for the murderer. And so I'm gonna. He doesn't say murderer, of course. And I'm also like, I'm his host. We're related.
So Macbeth.
Subject. He's going on, and at the end of it, he's just about to say, and so I'm not gonna kill him. End of soliloquy.
Right.
He says that he has no spur to criticize of his intent, but only vaulting ambition, which overleaps itself and falls.
So that right there.
On the other, how now? What news? Someone walks in the room. He says, we will proceed no further in this business. And she proceeds to say, what are you talking about? We had the whole plan. We're going to do it tonight. We have to do it tonight. We have to do it tonight. And suddenly he says, we will not. She says, are you even a man? He says, we are not going to do this. Don't freaking insult my manhood. And she says, we do the thing. He says, what, it doesn't work. She says, how could it? Here's how it would work in about 8 lines. And he says, wait a minute. So I have a further detail to add to your idea for the plot. She says, yes, exactly. And he says, I'm settled and bend up each corporal agent to this terrible feat.
Back we go.
So he's absolutely on the other end of the decision. Okay, we are going to murder him, and in fact, now.
So that's why he needed a partner who had executive planning skills.
Exactly. They're actually
it's not that Lady Macbeth.
Yeah,
she's not mean. She's just helping him project manage.
Yeah. We are actually my Jane Eyre Rochester swapped marriage is also a swapped Lady Macbeth because she will very much talk her out of doing things.
She's not the murderer.
That she's going to be very good at. It's like, no, you're going to be. No, she's not the murderer. She's a terrific murderer.
Yeah,
she would be a great murderer.
Such good.
She plans a good murder.
She's tiny. She's quiet.
Vengeful, right? But yes, right. Stealth and rage. Like, what else do you need? But she's also. We talked about this during the course of like we swapping because. But she will absolutely. She has issues with panic and in a real clinical sense.
Yeah.
And I am the one who like will talk her down from that, and ideally help her talk her down, and then also will still actually do the thing at some point eventually. And so I like to think about. I don't ever insult her masculinity in doing so, which I think maybe that's where Lady M.
Right.
But yes, it is very much it's a communicative marriage.
I derailed that conversation with an ADHD question about ADHD. Back to Ophelia's.
Burbage is having a beer. Ophelia is back on stage.
She's back on.
It is spoken of her right before she enters. The queen says, I will not speak with her, says her, the only other woman we've seen in the place so far. An unnamed gentleman says she is importunate, which is to say begging for you to speak to her. Indeed, distract. And by distract, we mean a polite way of saying not all with us. Her mood will need be hit. She says, what she have. She speaks much of her father. She says she speaks things in doubt that carry but half sense. Her speech is nothing if the unshaped use of it to move the hearers to collection, which in one sense is Fate of Ophelia. We've got obviously when we say the Fate of Ophelia, we think of who is that? Waterhouse, Rossetti, who is the famous,
the river.
The river, right. Whichever the pre-Raphaelite floating girl
there were
is.
several.
Right. In a Anne Shirley kind of way. And but the other Fate of Ophelia is also because we have another important question to come up after Ophelia's out of line, but we haven't heard the end of the story yet. Anyway, she comes on and she says all kinds of things that are clearly about her father, but are not of her father. She speaks in prose, but she also hums. Where is the snatches of old. That's in the Willow. But she's like singing little bits of songs that seem relevant, but it's also not entirely clear what their relevance is. But they seem to be about the death of her father and maybe about a deflowered maid.
Ooh, so she's not iambic pentametering anymore.
She is not iambic pentametering at all.
And
she's nowhere near it.
The essay people
There is
write.
some verse, but the verse is not spontaneous verse of a speaking Shakespeare character. They are bits of song.
Got it.
Bits of songs that the audience we assume
they would have known.
Right. Familiar songs. So that they would say, up he rose and donned his clothes and doffed the chamber door, let in the maid, that out a maid never departed more.
Ooh,
so
I know what that means.
Yeah, I know what that means. I don't know what it means.
Right.
I know what that song means. We would have to presume what she means by singing.
Yeah. So we're basically saying that as Ophelia moves through the play, as she sort of loses her mental capacity, she's spouting bits of other songs and folk songs and not speaking
that's the way
measured.
she can communicate.
Yeah. And is that how does she, I've read this, it's been a long time. And when I went to see it this summer, it was the night that the lights went out. So I only,
Georgia, right.
my kids and I saw the first half, which was like a hilarious comedy, and it ended all delightful.
Yeah, that's the way.
And my kids haven't seen the second half, so they think Hamlet's a comedy.
Like stopping old Yeller before, right?
Exactly, right. So what happens to her?
So what happens to her is, and then she leaves, and they talk about it. Her brother actually shows up at one point, and she doesn't recognize him. I have a terrific story about that I won't tell now. That is about a story I heard from an older director, even older actor, about playing Ophelia years ago. But she doesn't. She comes in, and she's like, "What are you?" She's like, "Oh, hey, hi." Not like, "Where have you been, my brother?" But like she's obviously not having clear, insane reactions to anything. She says a lot of obscure things about who should get which flower that she's been collecting, and sings bits of songs that again obviously have significance about Hamlet, about virginity, about a death, but are not parallel.
The script written for her,
but yes, the script written for her
pulled from other folk songs,
is most of it, or except for the side comments she makes, which are not clear, which is funny. I have to remind myself that they're not clear because the actor's job is they're not random. They do come from some. Shakespeare does not give her random shit to say. You just kind of have to figure it out. But there's also a really interesting thing because Hamlet is feigning madness the whole time. He's been pretending to be, and then we see someone who's actually feeling it. Hamlet, as many people noted, as Macbeth is the villain of Macbeth, Hamlet is in many ways the villain of Hamlet. It does not, the fact that he gets what he wants and it dies does not mean that. There's a lot of sprayed bullets, a lot of friendly fire.
Yes.
But anyway, so that's what happens to her essentially. She says, "Good night, ladies, good night," and we never see her again. And then the king and Laertes have a conversation about well, we're going to kill Hamlet, right? Because clearly, the king doesn't say because he's the only witness of my guilt. He's like, "So Laertes, you're gonna put up with that, huh? You a man? You're gonna let him treat your sister and your father that way, huh? And Laertes like, "What? No, I'll kill the guy. I'll kill the guy."
Right.
And there we go. And right while they are having this conversation, and right while the king has got him right where he wants him, just the way that I was talking about Macbeth having his decision-making process right where he wants it, and then someone walking in. In walks the queen and says, "Your sister's drowned, Laertes." And Laertes says
what a way to deliver information.
It is. She says, "One woe to tread upon another's heel so fast they follow. The woes are giving each other flat tires," in the step on someone's shoe sense.
No, bad news, sit down.
Right. And she says, "Your sister's drowned, Laertes," and he has this dumb little line, which is drowned. Oh, where? Which is either a super dumb line or the most perfect encapsulation of a surprised grief response ever.
Yeah.
It's sort of like,
you
what's
do
your
start
response?
to
Do you
logistics.
actually, you don't say,
No.
you don't say, "What? I will avenge her death," or you don't say,
no,
you don't start crying immediately because the thing has happened. The stunning is like, where did she drown? In the bathhouse?
I go into logistics mode. I will take care of things. I will.
It's not a logical reaction, and I kind of love it for that.
Yeah. What
and
a
then
good insight.
and then there's a lovely speech that the queen delivers. Now there are a lot of people who go in conspiracy here because people need canon. So gap. It's a very gappy speech,
right?
Because it's weird. Because what she describes happening to Ophelia is a little bit removed in a way that, considering beliefs about suicide at the time, and considering what is said about her, I should mention something else. A couple of other things happened to her after post the actor being done. The actor's in the trailer this one, unless she's playing another role, and not on later.
That was my other question. Was that
doubling?
Yeah.
My favorite doubling that I was ever responsible for, and again, no doubt someone else has done this, is I played Polonius once, and after we both died, Ophelia and I played the two gravediggers, talking about Ophelia's dead body. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But yes, she dies, and there is some great question in how it is described that she essentially is she's out on a tree, she's gathering flowers, a tree branch breaks, and she falls in the brook. She's just sort of laying there, singing bits of old songs again. I like as one incapable of her own distress. But and her big Elizabethan clothing then got heavy and
Alas, she
pulled
is
her
drowned,
down.
yeah.
Right. Alas, then she is drowned.
Yes,
Well, no, to muddy death. Alas, then she is drowned.
Okay.
Shared lines are a whole other thing.
Yeah.
When I start a line, when I lob a line up and you finish it,
right, and it still counts as iambic
and it still counts as
pentameter.
iambic pentameter.
I
But
love
it's also
that.
the implication is also don't take an actor pause in there, please. To muddy death. Alas, then she is drowned.
Yeah.
And then we got our weird drown. Or not a weird one, short. So that happens. But the way it's described, it is clearly like a branch broke, she fell in, but she did not get herself out, and she clearly was not capable, which is not the description of a willful act of self-harm. It is a person who is more a danger to herself because of her distract situation, and therefore. That said, when Laertes spoke to the priest at her funeral, which is being held seemingly in the middle of the night later on, it is like her death was doubtful, so she cannot have the full rites and stuff that you get at a full funeral.
Sure.
She's lucky she's getting this much, essentially. Yeah. As she knows people in high places who want it to happen. And Laertes does not take that well at all. A ministering angel, my sister be without life, howling, he said. I never played Laertes, but that line, that's with me.
I was gonna say, if you're just listening to this and not watching the video, he's just spouting this from memory.
Well, I just did it,
knows.
and I had to read it a bunch of times. And also, I'm a listener. I mean, as a good actor, you should be a listener. Yeah. But I find
it's also a really impressive quality that you should just say, "Oh yeah."
Well, impressive, but the kindness is more important than any whatever abilities of my personal cranial Velcro. But the interesting thing to me is I can't. If I were to play Polonius again next year, no, try to play the Player King again next year, I would be like,
you wouldn't remember your lines.
My lines that I said a bunch of times.
Yeah.
But I would probably remember the Player Queen's lines very well because
my
auditory memory, my memory's way more auditory.
Well, I was gonna say also that's like a sign of a good actor that you really are paying attention to the other people.
I would like to think that's why, but what it really is my memory is auditory. When I learn my own lines, I do it by listening.
And mine is not. Mine is so visual.
Mine is it's a mix, but I will remember. Like I can sing old comedy routines that I used to listen to as a kid, and that the inflections are still. But
that's how my kids know the periodic table.
Yeah, right. But
hydrogen and helium.
Antimony, arsenic, aluminum, selenium.
Oh,
right?
Yeah. Anyway.
Oh my!
I'm gonna edit this so much.
Oh, so much. This will be 12 minutes long.
But I'm gonna put this version on YouTube and let it live.
Yes. So there's some question as to. There's no question in what the Queen described to Laertes and Claudius when she comes in. She says a branch broke and she couldn't hold herself up in the water and she was not of a mental capacity to save herself. The question a lot of people have is like, why didn't the Queen go and save her? And
she couldn't swim.
It assumes a lot of things that to assume that Gertrude clearly left out.
Yeah.
It's like, well, I don't know. Where do you think she was standing? Like, I don't know how you think it worked. And also, like, the tradition of the Greek messenger is an old one. Like, there is a way you get things. You can't, to show a drowning death on the Elizabethan stage. It's like, is out of there. It's not like, well, we're going to make it broke. We're not going to show this.
But no, the messenger thing. Yeah.
But anyway, there's obviously a question, though. There is, because then the priest brings it up again later, like, oh, her death was doubtful.
So that's maybe.
They don't believe the Queen's story, or at least the priest doesn't. It's like, I think she jumped in the brook, and, did she fall or was she pushed? Or whatever. That she did the branch break, did the sliver come off the willow?
So if we're going to talk about what is the fate of Ophelia, then the literal answer would be we don't know. But it's one of three things. The literal answer
would be we don't know. Yeah. But what I suspect it would be madness.
Madness.
Would be a death that was either accidental and unprevented by her madness, or was intentional and the people surrounding it are not willing to talk about it. There is, and I noted the mention in the lyrics, that there is a fight where Laertes, in extremes of grief, far beyond drowned, where, says, hold off the dirt a while, stop burying her, and leaps into the grave with her body. At which point Hamlet jumps out from where he's been observing all of this and says, what the hell? Oh, you get to mourn? You think you're upset, essentially. I don't know what that word. Okay. He says, it all went to sleep. Hamlet hops out and says, you think you're upset?
Yeah.
I loved Ophelia. He said loudly, I love Ophelia. Some great large number of others do not.
Right.
Have loved her as much as
That's
I did. Right. Again, they're both in grief. Again, this is Hamlet's drowned. Where among? In fairness, he's just found out that Ophelia is dead.
Yeah.
There's no reason to come home and believe that Ophelia is going to be dead.
People respond to grief in strange ways.
Right. So, because he feels really shitty about how he treated Laertes almost immediately. Right. Once he leaves the room, he's immediately having a conversation with Rachel. And he apologizes publicly for.
Okay.
So, but regardless, the fate of Ophelia is also to have her body manhandled by two people proving they're, having a pissing contest about their own grief, even if they're doing it in grief and therefore not fully, where they would be thinking things through clearly. She also has her body in some production, not always. Laertes leaps into the grave. That's in the sparse stage directions of Hamlet. But she's laying there a dead body, and still stuff is going on about her.
Ophelia.
She's not even laid to rest there. A friend of mine told me about scared death by a production he saw, I think in L.A. In which the funeral ends and they walk off, and her body left lying Hamlet here, like Snow White there, right? And she, stage empty, sits up and exits up a big staircase.
Oh, wow.
And this is a play where we have established,
She's dead.
in Act 1,
Yeah.
that people die and their ghosts can come back and stuff needs to be dealt with. Like, that's a major plot point of Hamlet. So the idea of Ophelia's ghost also being a possibility fascinating me, but also it's not the normal thing too. And so it was a great like for the audience.
That's fun.
But anyway,
I like that. Okay.
Anyway, yes.
No,
So you wanted to talk about the Fate of Ophelia. We haven't actually gotten back to her actual lyrics.
Do you want to look through the lyrics online and see what you notice? I guess the question is, I noticed right away that the first line is iambic pentameter, and so I'm thinking both as a songwriter.
I heard you calling on the megaphone.
I heard you calling on the megaphone. But then the second one is you want to see me all alone. It's just 4.
No, right.
So if somebody were like, oh yeah, well she didn't do iambic pentameter, my thought is like neither did Shakespeare.
Shakespeare, not her. He didn't hold it up. I think there's just second or like very rarely at all.
Oh, wow. We're talking about Shakespeare. I forgot to make I think so.
For those little
easy button. No, all good. Thank you. So not everything in Shakespeare is iambic pentameter.
No.
And sometimes that was why. My understanding is that sometimes you just can't make everything perfect.
No.
Sometimes it's intentional to like leave the audience, or because a particular character is going through something mentally, it represents something. But
also,
like,
how like precious derogatory would it be to be like, and I wrote a whole song about Ophelia in iambic pentameter. I'm like, oh, great.
Fair.
Oop-de-doo.
Right. So it comes in and out. So now I want to kind of look through and see at what points it's perfect verse and what points it's not. Because I'm thinking like Shakespeare did that intentionally with Ophelia. In fact, we were just talking about how Ophelia starts.
She comes in and out of it.
Yeah. And
that's
so
fair.
Ophelia comes in and out of iambic pentameter and prose and throws in these references to folk songs and such. So now, of course, I want to deep dive and see if there are any
As
references.
legend has it, you were quite the pyro is feminine ending, but still, you think you could make that argument?
Yeah, it is.
The next 4 are not in any way.
No.
But here we go. I might have drowned in the melancholy, which I presume is what she's actually talking about. Is what she
That's the Fate of Ophelia that she's referencing.
Melancholy is also a pretty loaded word here.
In Hamlet, in particular.
In Hamlet, because, I mean, she means what you mean, I assume, by melancholy, which is like,
yeah.
Like most words in Shakespeare, our sense of them is very, you should pardon me, Ophelia, watered down. We have,
because drowning.
I mean, like melancholy means the same thing now as it did then, but less.
Yeah. I always thought
we have the sort of weaky version, whereas melancholy was
like a diagnosable
clinical depression.
Yeah.
Melancholy meant too much black bile in the way that they thought humor worked.
Yes.
Although we're on our way back there.
Existential angst.
But no, it was like there was a large book about melancholia that it is believed because of some of, not to be in particular, that's like, Shakespeare was apparently familiar with that work.
Interesting.
Because things line up.
Well, I remember talking about melancholy as related to Hamlet in this, English high school course about how melancholy is when you kind of enjoy it. Like you're depressed, but you're not like,
right.
It's sort of romantic,
right.
Or like romanticized depression.
It's teenage goth bullshit.
Yeah.
Not that all goth is bullshit, but there is goth bullshit. There's a specific breed.
And that was more of the Hamlet situation.
Yeah.
But yeah, so, and just
when he was in fact the melancholy Dane, as they call him, like melancholia was a like, oh no, he might do himself harm. We are concerned.
Right.
Like he's not like those.
Yeah, and that's always the big discussion about Hamlet too, is like how much of it's real, how much of it's not. But we're talking about Ophelia. In the Fate of Ophelia.
But I'm going to say she brings up other Shakespeare and other characters than Ophelia in this, and I think
tell us about that.
Melancholy is
that's definitely related.
Is a loaded word in this play, and usually attached to Hamlet, but absolutely fair to attach.
I love that.
That's all I want.
Yeah, no, that's good. What else have you noticed? Because there's all kinds of things that I think people in general, and you don't know the pop culture version, but
no,
like
I
in
don't.
general,
all the stuff about her.
I don't know her relationships and stuff either, but I do know.
Get those.
Well, I know the current Travis Kelce one, and it seems like she's had a history of dating maybe emo boys, and could have gone down this one path, and then met just like a really great guy who cares, and she could have had this awful thing, and now she doesn't. So that's a simplified
She could have
version.
gotten involved with the red flag guy who shows up 2:00 in the morning, grabs her arm, traces her face without touching it as a draw, and then backs out of the room.
Exactly, which is what Hamlet does.
But like in fairness, she could fix him.
That's a song, isn't it?
Probably.
But Daddy, I Can Fix Him, or something like. Oh wait, it's But Daddy, I Love Him, and maybe that's the same song.
Right, but it's everything. It's every version of Beauty and the Beast. But I presume that without even going into, as I'm sure many could, the very specific but no details of Taylor Swift's relationship had, that anyone can attest to the sort of like the reason Ophelia ends like she does is because she's decided, that bad boy, the dark boy with the leather jacket is the one.
Exactly.
And to find out that his darkness is not an interesting performative tool. James Dean, I look good was cigarettes. I squint because I won't wear my glasses. I decide to squint sexy. That's an actual James Dean story.
Wow.
But that you're going to end up like you're going to end up crashed on the side of the road. It complete the James Dean metaphor, but also like that doesn't end well for you. Fixing him, it doesn't end well.
Fixing never.
Best case scenario, you don't fix him, but worst case scenario, you end up in the brook drowning in the weight of your own petticoats.
And nobody paints a beautiful painting of you.
Probably not.
It's very ugly.
No, maybe Josh Mankiewicz, the Dateline watchers.
So
anyone?
that's the general like surface level appreciation or understanding of the Fate of Ophelia. What do you notice that like your typical pop music appreciator wouldn't notice because you're so involved? This is if you're just catching up. This is Greg Maupin. He's a dramaturg, Shakespearean actor.
Right. If you haven't been listening to the last 4 hours of us talking, getting to this point, that was the only reason I'm here.
Well, I'll probably cut this out into other things.
Oh, absolutely. So, God, for the love of all, totally cut it.
I know. I'm gonna. Yeah. I'll probably transcribe it in AI and just say, no, AI is good for transcription and editing.
Okay, that's not actually AI. That's just pretty.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I for.
All that time I sat alone in my tower. That's pretty basic medieval maiden stuff. There's no real tower stuff in this. I mean, unless she's referring back to her. She did a Romeo and Juliet song at some point, right? I know enough to know that.
She did.
Yeah.
Well, I saw somebody like jumping in going, "Oh, Taylor Swift's so dumb. She talked about a tower, and that's Rapunzel." And I was like, I'm pretty sure she knows that there's no tower in Shakespeare. It's a symbol.
And also we are in a castle. Yeah, there's no mention of her being sitting alone. She's sitting alone in what would have been called her closet, which is not your bedroom, but it's just sort of your little room where you stuff. In
so
ye olde.
A literal tower.
Yeah, I don't know what floor of Elsinore she was on. You're Tony Powers.
It's also a great rhyme.
Yeah. No, I can see it all. You dug me out of my grave and saved my heart from the fate. You dug me out of my grave is not like specifically true. They don't dig her out of her grave. They hold off the earth. They get it. But the point stands that like they do. Her Ophelia's body is dealt with while both dead and not quite buried in the grave that has already been put in.
Right, because there's a scene in Shakespeare where Laertes, what does he do to?
He leaps into her grave.
He leaps into her grave.
Right. And to like hold off the earth a while that I may hold her in my arms.
Does he kind of dig her out of her grave then, I guess?
Well, I mean, it depends on your definition of the word dig. Like she's in the grave, but the dirt's not covered. Right. So I'm not going to pick about her use of the word dug. I'm just being specific. Yeah. But that is an Ophelia event. If you want to describe that as an Ophelia, that is a specific reference to the obvious event, surface of what happened. Well, below the surface.
Yes.
But surface events that take place in the storyline.
And I think that's an interesting point too to talk about how people jumping in here and saying, "Oh, she misunderstood Hamlet. She misunderstood Ophelia." Yeah. Sometimes it's just about referencing and like using the language of like and I say this as a songwriter and things like you might want to use a word that was in your favorite song or use a style.
I think it's worth also talking about the difference between a reference and let me make this sound fancy. This makes it a higher deal. I'm sure that people would appreciate that. An allusion.
He does audiobooks too.
Right. Well, I'm saying that so people don't think I'm saying illusion like the stuff that Secret and Joy do on Instagram. And which is like a reference, but it's a reference that people. It is expected that to say the fate of Ophelia is the tiny pointy part of an iceberg, and it is expected that you are aware of that iceberg. It is not a sense that like no one is like, what is this Ophelia she's referring to? Like it's very different for her, I'm sure, to be like making some reference to some specific thing that happened in a relationship that only two people would even freaking know.
Yeah. You have to
expect that someone would have to figure out, or she would have to tell, or not she. Why do I keep saying she? Like it's a capital F. Like that the writer would have to tell. But this is like, well, it's Ophelia. Like you know who I mean when I say Ophelia, unless you have been living under a rock or you are actively divorced from. I won't even say Western culture because Shakespeare is as widely looked on in Eastern culture in some places. It's hugely although the Japanese relationship with Shakespeare is culturally fascinating.
I think okay.
But anyway, so like she's not beholden to like make a whole thing that tracks off the specific similarities of every twist and turn of Ophelia's events. Like no, it's the fate of Ophelia, not the life story of Ophelia. It's the fate of Ophelia, which is ending up drowned. Metaphorically, in her case, I don't think she seems to be afraid she's going to fall off a willow tree, but drowned in the melancholy. Right. Where were we? Keep 100 on the land sea.
Eldest daughter of a nobleman.
We're going to get down there. I'm looking to see if there's anything. Don't no. There's nothing particularly in that. Like nothing specifically.
Yeah, and the keep 100 part, as far as I understand it, that's a reference to her and Travis, like their favorite number, that up to 100, being 100. And also, I just assumed keep it 100.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
It's
sure.
Like a thing.
Eldest daughter of a nobleman. Yeah. Only daughter.
Yeah.
But I'm assuming she's got this eldest daughter thing going on.
She does. There's another song called Eldest Daughter, and she also is the eldest daughter of her own family. There's only two, I think. But I'm an eldest daughter, and I'm an only child. Good Lord, did I feel the eldest daughter pressure?
Well, no, I don't want to get like that. Yeah, I don't want to go down the eldest versus elder nonsense. That's not important. Ophelia lived in fantasy, but love was a cold bed full of scorpions. The venom stole her sanity. Here's what's intriguing about that to me. I'm going to check the concordance real quick, which is to say say
that
the
mean?
app. I've got an app with all of Shakespeare on it because everybody, it's public domain.
He's a dramaturg.
Right, you're right. It was worth paying for the pro version.
No, that's amazing. This is why I want to talk to you about this. Because
but I don't.
Scorpion. When else?
Well, Scorpion is only said 3 times in Shakespeare. Yeah.
What place?
And the one that I'm thinking of, the famous one, was Cymbeline. Weirdly, Henry VI Part 2.
Weird,
you know, Henry VI Part 2. Everybody
one of my
quotes it
favorites.
readily.
Yeah.
But our boy Mackers says when he is personally dealing with a mental anguish, oh, full of scorpion is my mind, dear wife. And that's where my brain goes immediately when I hear that.
So,
and you primed me by saying Ophelia, be thinking Shakespeare.
Yes. So
I'm
mean
assuming
by
it's
Mackers,
Macbeth. Yeah.
So yeah, Scorpion.
But love was a cold bed full of scorpions, the venom, soul, or sanity. Yeah, those are a very Macbeth series of images there.
I love
scorpions and venom.
And I feel like I read in one of those kid books. That's a book that says phrases you didn't know actually came from Shakespeare.
No.
That my head full of scorpions was actually in there, like as a
like a thing people say. But I'm not aware of people saying, "Oh, full of scorpions is my mind, dear wife."
Maybe
like,
I've seen Macbeth.
In the same way that they say like the be all and the end all.
I usually hear a head full of spiders in average. Sorry, there's spiders in my brain.
Oh yeah. And
People say that, but okay.
Not
So Scorpion is mentioned.
Scorpion.
And what about venom? Is like a theme.
Again, well, I'm
ear
attaching it
toward
to
it?
the scorpions, and there's again the venom. I think it's a fair attachment to. I'm stuck on Macbeth for that one because it's not really an Ophelia thing, but like venom gets actually I think in the same scene. Well, there's a poison poured into Hamlet's father here, when he died. But and is it actually venom? I don't think they use the word venom, but the tip of the sword that Laertes poison. There are poison,
and that's a difference. Venomous versus poisonous snakes. But
I don't know. But I don't know that would have been a delineation that somebody in 1601 would have been real worried about.
That's a very fair point.
But
and sometimes in songwriting, it just is a better word.
Yeah, you use the better word that conjures up more pictures, whether it's not scientifically accurate.
Yeah, or that rhymes.
We're not there for comic book, clearly. The person who's writing that venom, not poison. But venom shows up. There's a lot of imagery in equating his own enemies with serpents and snakes.
Yeah, I wrote a whole paper on imagery, and I think I wrote it on bird imagery.
There's a lot. What does he say after he finds out that Banquo is dead, but Plant wasn't? He says, "There the grown serpent lies, the worm that's fled. I'm looking for venom. Have nature that in time will venom breed.
Like
no teeth for the present." I'm really
just,
pulling it out of a play I closed a week ago.
Accept that it's a badass.
Well, it's.
He did just do.
I did literally just do. Like it would be different
plays
again.
Have you done
I do
this
not
year?
know.
Well, just this year alone.
This year alone.
And 4 at least.
Yeah.
So that's a lot. Okay. So what else you got? We've got
Scorpions, Venom, Solar Sanity. So no, I think it's a nice blending in of what goes on with Ophelia and those images. But those images are Macbeth images. And if you'd never come for me, I might have lingered in Purgatory. Huge. Again, we've already talked about a priest saying her death was doubtful. There's no reason that a priest in 1601 said that her death was doubtful without meaning like heaven. And also not Ophelia, but Hamlet's father, whose ghost shows up for a lot of Act 1, never says the word Purgatory, but is clearly in a purgatorial state.
Yes.
He is not clearly in hell, but he is in some kind of allowed to come back and forth, and walk the earth, whatever.
And Purgatory meaning in a between state that comes from that old book. What's the book that like?
Oh, Dante? You thinking of Purgatorio? Yeah.
Isn't that the original origin? I mean,
I'm sure it existed, but like cultural. But anyway, in religious culture, there is a Catholic doctrine, or has in the past been, where there is a place that is neither heaven nor hell, but where you can,
and that's Purgatory. And so, in the reference in this, the reference of Purgatory to Hamlet then is the doubtfulness of Ophelia's death, that she may or may not have been allowed into heaven. We don't know because her death is doubtful, meaning that she might have unalived herself.
Right, in a way that was not allowed to. Well, being
let to be, being not helped.
Although even I say that and like Hamlet's father is murdered, and that's not on him.
Right.
So heaven doesn't, in my understanding of old Catholic rules,
but Purgatory.
He was murdered, which means he did not receive the sacrament of last rites. He says that he went into his I've lost the word unshriven, unannealed. No, I'm pretty sure unshriven, unannealed is something that the Major General said in Pirates of Penzance. But he
Purgatory would be in that. I'm very good at Purgatory.
No, he says, "Am I to die unshriven, unannealed? Will no is he to die?" Mabel says it. "Unshriven, unannealed. Oh, spare him. Will no one in his halls a weapon yield? Oh, spare him." But Dead Papa says, and I will find it if I can go away with it. Oh, that's a pretty good shot. I'm almost there. Murder move out. And is the serpent that did sting thy father's life. Now where's his crown? So there is a chunk of it here.
I love it.
Metaphorically, yes. No, we know all of that. Sleeping in my orchard.
Purgatory? Do we think
they don't ever say the word purgatory.
You don't need to search that in your app.
No, I know it. But there is unhousel. That's what I'm looking for. Thus was I sleeping by a brother's hand of life, a crown of queen at one once dispatched, cut off even in the blossoms of my sin, unhouselled, which is to say I didn't take a host, disappointed, which is to say unprepared, like in the real strict sense of disappointed, right, improperly appointed, I'm not ready, unannealed, and annealed is he didn't get the host and he didn't get the oil, he didn't get the last rites, he didn't get to do a final confession where whether he was an awful person or a good person, he had some sins on his head and he died with them. That is why he's in purgatory. Alleged.
So there's lots of purgatory references.
There's lots of purgatory references
in Hamlet without actually saying
there's no reckoning made, but sent to my account with all my impressions on it. Yeah, that's the easier way to say it. Most people leave in unhouselled, sometimes maybe crimson time, and no one knows how to mean.
No one knows it.
Except a few nuns. Yeah. So anyway, that's worth noting that purgatory is a deal.
So I mean, if you're just writing a song about a Shakespearean character, it makes sense to sprinkle in as many Shakespearean references as possible, musically and lyrically.
Absolutely. You wrap around me like a chain, a crown, a vine, pulling me into fire. This is a word association thing, but because I'm working on a Christmas Carol right now, the appearance of Marley's ghost is way tied up to the appearance of Hamlet's ghost, just like intentionally. It's a like clearly.
Yeah, it's the beginning.
Clearly, everybody knows this. It's serving the same structural purpose.
Yeah.
But and also, I've come back from beyond to tell you what needs to happen.
I love this.
But it's also like he mentions Hamlet at the beginning. He mentions Hamlet's ghost earlier, slightly earlier when he's talking about Marley. Like the whole, it's a whole thing. So while there are no chains specifically on Hamlet's dad, there clearly are on Marley. They're very very much mentioned. So that's that. I don't think she's thinking of that. I just am.
But that's
a couple
the thing.
Of associations
like,
I'm doing.
Like why else would she write that? Like,
but a chain, a crown, a vine pulling me into the fire. You wrap around me like a chain, a crown, a vine. My brain, I'm not. I'm thinking crown, and I'm thinking the very frequent image of like a flower crown that is on Ophelia. That's really common. Yeah. The floral attachment to her. A vine pulling me into the fire. I mean, I don't have to go back and describe the sliver of willow that broke and dropped her into the water, not fire. Which again is an interesting thing here.
She didn't say water.
You'd say a vine pulling me into the water, which would be expected, and she says fire. Interesting thing. Well, interesting. I don't know.
No, I think this is part of what she does too. Is she tends to go towards the unexpected rhyme instead of the obvious rhyme, or even the unexpected word. And that's something I've noticed in lots of songs of hers. Even that, and I'm not just like I don't know the deep dive, but I've heard things and gone, oh, I was expecting it to be this, but it was that, and I love that because I hate predictable.
Which is a thing that Ophelia does.
What? Explain.
Because in one of her little songs that she's singing, the first one, maybe, where is she? Is she in? The song would seem to be, we don't maybe know this literal. Oh, it is. The song is a version of a popular ballad much quoted elsewhere. I don't know why I'm pulling out. This version is great. This is the art third. This is the art second. Okay. And I keep it. Yeah, it's got a worse cover. No, but the heraldic, the notes in this one are like are gorgeous. They're terrific. They're, they're good. They're chewy notes. But the modern, this is the conflated Hamlet. This is the Folio and the Quarto.
Yeah, I don't want that.
Both of them, and everybody for centuries has been like, well, we took all the good parts and put them together. Like if you were to try to edit like single version of Revolution and the album version of Revolution to get all the parts that you want,
Noted.
right?
Okay.
One of those. Or if you were to try to do that at home, like nobody. That's not actually what the author did. But the tendency now. Oh, I am on pulling me into the fire.
Right.
So the little song she sings, which is about how should your true love know from another one. He is dead and gone, lady. He is dead and gone. At his head a grass green turf. White his shroud as the mountain snow. Larded all with sweet flowers, which the wept to the ground did not go with love shower. The thing is, it is thought that the text to the song is white his shroud as the mountain snow. Larded all with sweet flowers, which he wept to the ground did go with love shower. Which is to say, we buried the old man. We buried the shrouded body, which we wept to the ground to go with true love shower. Which is to say, we the flowers that we put in his grave, we watered with our tears. In yieldy ballad poetry. But she says did not go, which is not the word song, and it doesn't fit in with a meter, which wept to the ground did not go. Because the big controversy, the reason Laertes comes back super pissed, leading a literal revolution outside the doors. A lot cheaper to stage a revolution just outside the doors. And everybody goes, look at that revolution out there than it is to have the actual people come. Yeah, it's just cheaper. But if you can do it with the words, the producers will think. The fact that Polonius, as I've mentioned this, Polonius' death was covered up. Like Ophelia clearly knew about it, but the public was not told about it. Laertes has a lot of discussion about this. Like it was not told that Hamlet killed him, and it was barely mentioned that he was dead. And it's like where, and it's gotten out. Clearly, it's gotten out, but they were like they're covering it up. Yeah, okay. And government cover-ups very frequently do not work in the long run, or at least one hopes not. But white his shroud as the mountain snow, larded with sweet flowers, which the wet ground did not go with true love showers, is a thing that would seem to be by anyone who, by the scholars I trust who know where this ye olde ballad came from.
She got the word wrong.
She got the words wrong.
Or she flipped it.
She changed the word because be wept to the ground. He did not have a big public funeral where people got to weep for him. He didn't. They buried him and just were like, well, your father's been buried. Like they did not do that. His public funeral did not occur, as was his due as a fancy big deal. Right. So that is an unexpected addition that perhaps an audience who knew that song would have been like, and it would have heard the not that's not supposed to be in there, but that is Ophelia editorialized,
Yes.
saying, which we did not cry over him publicly. Guys, remember that? Was I the only one who noticed that? Anyway.
Yeah, no, I love that.
So that
for choosing fire
instead of water, that's a long. These are all.
No, I love it, and we're
that's
gonna
what deep dives are for.
I was gonna say we're also gonna do another concise thing now that you've sort of discovered this, where we just like in 2 minutes.
Oh, sure.
Yep. But yes, that whole pulling me into the vine, pulling me into the fire. Well, Ophelia, it was a willow vine or
willow branch. Right. And there's a scent of flower chains and such. Again, that's not textually in there, but that's an image that is absolutely associated. Right. And associated with Ophelia, I don't assume that she's only taking as her inspiration some words. Yeah. But there are famous paintings and performances.
In fact, the cover of this album is clearly a nod to
a riff on the painting.
Yeah, and the video too. And there's very obvious. She's not trying to be subtle about that. But I don't know. One thing I like is that also it's just a banger of a song, so none of this matters. You can just go to the club and dance.
Right. That's
interesting.
Well,
I feel like as a writer,
I don't want to overdo this, but like that's a Shakespeare thing as well. Like it's very easy for people to sit and go, But ideally, like you go to see Macbeth because it's a ride.
It is so
It's
good.
a ride.
Yeah.
Not because you're like note that he chooses the elbow patches. Don't wear your elbow patches here.
Correct. It's a show.
It's a show, and it's got a bunch of murders and sword fights and people screaming at each other and regicide and cool stuff. Right.
Yes.
And clearly that's the reason you go.
You go there. You drink your beer and you shout and you are entertained.
These were written for an audience that was only half paying attention. They did not have a public bathroom. There were sex workers and fruit sellers walking around the stalls with much more interesting stuff than what's going on stage. You gotta the audience. You gotta shake the keys.
I love that, the duality of people who you can. I feel like with Shakespeare, you can get whatever you want to out of it. Go as deep as you want, or just go enjoy the play.
I am looking for the conversation that Polonius and Laertes and Ophelia have, because the next line, Laertes most humbly, is very thought. Where is it? I swear it's in here.
I believe you.
Oh, maybe it's Laertes and not Polonius.
Can you use your app? Tell you?
I believe that Ophelia says that I will keep it in my memory lock.
Oh, yeah, I know that line.
And 'tis locked inside my memory, and only you possess the key.
And that's the bridge. If that, actually, I should ask you, like, that's the bridge of the song. 'Tis locked inside my memory, and it's not in pentameter. We discussed this before, how the actual meter, the measures of the song are 5 and not 4, but that part is not.
And that part is in a different.
And so is like Keep It 100. That part
is the same.
Which maybe is bringing it back to modern time. Like it was in pentameter, but now we're gonna do a little dance break.
'Tis locked inside, or it just sounds better.
Inside my memory.
'Tis locked inside my memory, and only you possess the key. I'm thinking of this is Laertes. I said Laertes went like, hey, blew it by saying, hey, remember what I said about Hamlet? And then Dad is like, what did he say about Hamlet? Right, that business. Farewell, Ophelia, and remember well what I have said to you. Ophelia says, 'tis in my memory lock, and you yourself shall keep the key of it.
Of course. I'm sorry. Surely that has been pulled out, but maybe not.
Yeah, that's like literally one of Ophelia's lines.
Right.
Like surely someone has.
I would have thought
some young actor who has played Ophelia and been like, there's a song about Ophelia, has listened to it and gone like, oh, that's one of her lines.
Right.
And her voice was just like that.
Yes. But on the off chance that they haven't done that yet, we're going to make a separate video about that line, because
it's in my memory locks, and only you possess the key. Which I will not be weirded out by the fact that this is something that Ophelia says to her brother, not her fiancé.
So that's great. That's cool.
Right. No longer drowning and deceived. The cover drowning. And then that. Have we reached the end of the lyric? I think we have reached the end of new lyrics.
The bridge and
repetition is important, but it's out of my.
Right after the bridge is a banging chorus again.
I've decided that "Don't Care Where the Hell You've Been" is a connection to Purgatory, but
it could be.
That's what she mentioned. No, she mentions fire and pyro and such a lot.
Yeah, there's a lot of images of fire, pyro, and is that revolutionary?
Which is interesting because you think of Fate of Ophelia as clearly being water. And to mention that much fire is there's all kinds of ways. Again, you got Purgatory, but you've also got fiery Purgatory. What is that? That's my auditory brain going hearing snatches of old laws, and it's from 1776.
Yeah, I don't
John
have that
Adams
album.
at the end of 1776.
Oh, right.
Commitment. Yeah, he sings something in his big thing. He said he sings something. There'll be hell to pay, and fiery Purgatory. Yeah. Anyway, that's not important.
I love it.
Other references to Purgatory. I'm just going to throw a bunch of them in, and if somebody else can make links.
No, that's good.
Great. Welcome to my problem.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I feel like that's all. So you wanted to do a quick run through of the lyrics again to be, and then.
I do just so I can kind of cut. Because I realize now that this is going to take me a long time to.
Oh, absolutely.
To go through, and I want.
Should we say should we do a pretend ending to what we've been doing?
Yes, we should. Okay. We should do an ending to okay, so this is Greg, and he's been going through the lyrics and
more than enough.
Yes, and
more than enough.
I love it. It's a super deep dive into Shakespeare and connection to Taylor Swift, and I learned a lot about Shakespeare that was not at my English class, and I think that's an important thing to remember too, is that there is the performer and there is the English class, and there's a difference there, and I feel like the same thing goes for Taylor Swift. Like ultimately, she's an entertainer.
Oh yeah,
and that there's imagery and
there's a difference in living in a house and taking an architecture class.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we shouldn't be judgy about someone doesn't
No.
want to take the architect class,
Yeah,
but they
no,
want to have a roof.
absolutely. Yeah.
Also, I just think it's interesting to talk about the way that people analyze Shakespeare today and similar ways that people analyze Taylor Swift, and yet nobody is like making fun of people who well, maybe you disagree, but
Make
in
fun of
general,
people who overanalyze Shakespeare.
I feel like people who overanalyze Shakespeare is generally like that's a revered thing. And
I mean, there are people who make fun of us, but it's more in a swirly, throw in the locker kind of a way.
Right. And
not in a like massive like Swiftie horde coming at you online.
Yeah.
Woo-hoo!
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, and it's not considered like lowbrow to analyze Shakespeare, whereas I feel like it is considered lowbrow by some people to analyze Taylor Swift.
Right.
And yet it's the same thing. And when you talk about Shakespeare in his time, like he was like a well-known entertainer, like and provider of entertainment.
His venue, like the street where he worked, was pretty much where you went to see wrestling, where you went to see bears fight dogs, or where you went to see like I guess Hamlet.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for hanging out. This was super fun and interesting, and I want to talk to you about a lot of things, but I will do that on my own time, not on your time. So thanks for coming to my not podcast. Gregory Maupin. Check out all the links that I'm going to put below because he got a lot. And I'm serious. I mentioned this earlier, but he's done like a million. He hates it when I talk about products that he has because he doesn't actually have product because he's an actor. But he should. He has edited so many Shakespeare shows into bite-sized and accessible.
And non-Shakespeare.
And that's right. And
many public domain.
Yeah, he's got like a 60-minute version of Jekyll and Hyde, of Macbeth, of Christmas Carol, with like not a lot of actors. And so I feel like if you want to talk about licensing versions of these, mess because otherwise you won't put it on a website. But I will.